Shalom, shalom. I'd like to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Ruach HaKodesh. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace, blessing, and safety to all the Akim while they're pushing His truth throughout the four corners of the earth, and to the hopeful elect out there. This is the brother Abadia from the GMS Toronto camp, coming back at you with another one. And been hearing a lot of talk about, America, possibly, well, it's prophecy that, they're gonna have to, do a draft. But, I came across this article today, you know, uh, says Lindsey Graham calls for national draft, fighting and dying for Israel is, is an America's highest honor. So, going over there fighting a war for for Israel, you know, for the tiny tops is America's highest honor, and and the American people, they're not down with this war, majority of them, they're not happy about it. There was the one, I believe it was the Marine, a Marine sergeant, was escorted out saying he didn't want to fight, Israel's war. No one's pleased. No one's pleased with this. So it's a Senator Lindsey Graham called for a full-scale U.S. military draft to escalate the Iran war into boots on the ground. Because that's what Trump's been putting out there. That there possibly might have to be boots on the ground. War into boots on the ground invasion, claiming in Fox News interview that every American service member should be willing to fight and die for Israel. Well, that's a joke. No one wants no one in America wants to go and fight this war. This war that and that just shows, man, that anything that that nation wants, anything that Israel wants, America has to follow suit. America has to do, you know. And that this is how, at the end of the day, this is how World War III is gonna be all orchestrated because of Israel's doing, drawing America out to fight their war, and here it is that they expect the American people to be behind that, and one way that they can get the America to be behind that is to stage a T attack. When I did a video, I believe last week or the week before, that Israel was planning, to carry out one of these, you know, T attacks on American soil, and if that happens, which we believe it will happen, it's just a matter of when, that will get, that will get, that will get some Americans over there, roused up, to want to go and fight this war, because they feel like they're they don't want to fight a war that has nothing to do with them. Like Iran has done nothing to them. So by them staging a T attack and blaming it on Iran, you know, it could draw people to go out there and fight for America. And it talks about this in Second Ezra 16:13. The virgin shall mourn, having no bridegroom. The woman shall mourn, having no husbands. They're not gonna have any husbands because these men are gonna get drafted. They're gonna go out there and they're gonna die. They're gonna die in war. And this is why you know the Isaiah 4:1 could you know could could happen because of something like this. All these women are going to be widows. You know, and then they're not going to have any man, you know, to protect them, to cover over them, and that's why the elect, are gonna shine, are gonna shine during this time, during that time of Jacob's trouble, during the time of war. Second Ezra 16:13, the virgin shall mourn, having no bridegroom. The woman shall mourn, having no husbands. Their daughters shall mourn, having no helpers. These women, they're gonna know what it feels like. They're gonna be alone, and they're gonna be alone because they're men. Their boyfriends, their fathers, uncles, um, husbands, whatever, are gonna get called out to go and fight this war. Verse 34: In the war shall their bridegroom be destroyed, and their husband shall perish of famine. Because they're gonna be drawn out there to fight this war for Israel. And I went into Chat GPT and I put in when the last time the U.S. conducted a military draft. So it says the last time the United States actually drafted people into the military was June 30th, 1973. During the final phase of the Vietnam War, the last man drafted entered the U.S. on that date. What happened after 1973? In January 1973, the U.S. government ended active conscription and moved to an all-voluntary military. Yeah, because right now it's you got to volunteer to join the army. You're not forced. Since then, the U.S. Armed Forces, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and etc. have relied entirely on volunteers. But the system still exists, and that's why what's his name? Lindsey Graham, wants to bring this, is talking about bringing this back into effect. Even though there hasn't been a draft since 1973, the selective service system still exists. Most men in the U.S. must register at age 18, between 18 and 27. This registration allows the government to restart a draft quickly if Congress and the president authorize it during a national emergency. So that's what I'm saying. If some shit goes and pops off over there in America, if there's a lot of casualties, if the people, if people, are in fearful, then this they could easily activate this and require there to be a draft. And nowhere here does it say that the system doesn't exist or that it's banned. It says the system still exists. So it's just a matter of Congress passing it and making it active again. So this is what's coming to Babylon the Great. This is what this man wants to do. And I wasn't sure who he was, so I googled him, and like this guy just going on a rampage, talking about making lots of money from war. Here it says Al Jazeera, we're going to make a ton of money. U.S. Senator Graham on U.S. war on Iran. Trump ally Lindsey Graham issues threat to Saudi Arabia over Iran war. So, here it is, America. America wants everyone to come join in. On this on this war with Iran. Pressing these other nations. Because they're getting their ass kicked over there. I was watching some videos earlier today, and you know the Israeli military, is getting their ass kicked, and the U.S. troops over there, they ain't confident. They ain't confident because Iran's coming hard with it, you know, and it's the Most High putting the spirit on Iran to to not back down, to not back down from this bully, But these devils are proud, man. Psalms 49:11, their inward thought is that their houses shall continue forever. So this devil thinks that their empire, their rulage is going to continue forever. They feel like they're going to continue to carry on the way they've been carrying on for decades, and get away with it. But that shit's coming to an end. It's crumbling from underneath them. So their inward thought is that their houses shall continue forever, and that their dwelling places to all generations. They called their lands after their own names. So these devils feel like this is just another one of those wars that they're gonna you know bulldoze their way through, and just that's that. But that's not the case. That's why they feel like they have to call for a draft. It's desperate times. Desperate times come from call for desperate measures. That's why it says he's like a roaring lion, this devil, seeking about who he may devour. And he's moving hastily because he knows he has a short time. Devil knows he doesn't have a lot of time left. So that's why a draft will have to happen. And like it talks in Second Esdras, you know, these women are going to be made widows because their men are going to get drafted out there. You know, it's all prophecy. So that's just a little quick hit. We'll see when these see when they're gonna put this into act. But like I said, and like a lot of brothers are saying as well, we believe that you know something's gonna happen over there in America to get the people kind of riled up, because you know just like how U.S. bombed that school, or was it they said it was an Israeli missile. I'm not sure if it was Israeli or American missile. I can't remember, but that got them riled up, as if they weren't already riled up as it is. So something would have to happen, on American soil for people to want to go and fight, like what happened in 9/11, right? You know, and if we already know that that was just all planned at the end of the day. But to the American people, something happened to them. So then a war in Iraq a war in Iraq started off of that. And people were ready to die for that. So something along that line would have to make the American people want to go over there and fight this this war for Israel. And that just shows America's a joke. And American and we're in the end time, so it's clear to see that Babylon the Great, it's fallen. So that's gonna do it for this video. I'd like to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakwadash, and double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, and peace and blessing and safety to all the elect scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. I pray this lesson was edifying, and until the next one, Shalom.